But it was like uncanny, amazing, unbelievable type of thing. But this guy, you know, he didn't teach these. He taught them character and integrity and things like that. His first day of practice, he would take all the kids into the locker room, the college folks into the locker room, and he would take their shoes and socks off. And he'd show them how to put the shoes and socks back on and do it right so there was no creases in there. They don't get any blisters, and that would stop them from being able to practice or whatever it was. I mean, this guy was down to the basics. He had them doing drills without basketballs, pivoting, this and that and the other thing. I don't even know. I can't play basketball. But they could. And the reason they could was because he took it back to the basics. Now let's go back to chiropractic. Some of the most, let's just say, impactful chiropractors that I know, meaning that they've had an impact on many, many lives. Reggie Gold. Right? Another one, Joe Donafria. Just at a lot of people. Pat Sarasoli. These people, well, particularly, we'll go back, say, Reggie and Joe, I specifically heard this from. They had an ability to say the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, like it was the first time they ever said it. And I said, you know something? Ernie always tells that story about the guy, new preacher in town, and he goes and he does this sermon. And, you know, everybody's all fired up about this new preacher, and then they all go home, and they come back next Sunday, and he gives the exact same sermon. And they're like, you know, they go home, and they come back, and he does it again. And they're like, you know, it was really a great sermon, but, I mean, you keep saying the same thing over and over. He goes, that's because you guys should stop hearing it and start living it, then I'll tell you something else. But you see, that's why they had to keep saying it over and over and over and over again. So I made a commitment in my office. Look, when we're here, we might get real deep about philosophy. That's cool, because you don't need to convince me about chiropractic, so I can maybe go further. But these people aren't there. They need to first know what the basics are. They need to know how to put their socks and shoes on still. They need to know how to pivot still. They need to know that there's a life within our bodies. First and foremost, that it's from God, through man, and expressing into ourselves. And that the purpose of the adjustment is to open that up. And then, you know, I just take it this one little step further, and this is basically all I say over and over and over again. And I'm going to tell you something, by the way, for anybody who's maybe like intimidated to do that. Nobody's ever said to me, you just told us that last time we were here. And I tell them every single time the same thing. I say, you know, it's not the adjustment that's important, it's living with the power on. It would be great if you could come in here and not even need an adjustment because the power was on. Or need just less adjusting because your life is being expressed so much more all the time. That's the principle that we're dealing with. If it's the science of life, let's talk about life. Let's talk about them living with that life on all the time. Let's get them to see that concept and see it again and see it again and see it again. And every time, is it really hard to say the same thing over and over again and be excited? It's not for me, because I'm excited about it. Because when I take care of somebody and I know that we opened up that life in there, that's a pretty exciting. When Sue came down and touched Rosie, can I tell him what happened? Rosie pulled up her arms and showed George. She said, look, I got goose flesh. She wasn't just saying this stuff. She did it. She opened her up and let the power shine through. I mean, that's awesome. That's so great. And we can see it and be it and do it every single day in our offices. But what it requires is this. And since Sue also brought up Gonstead, here's my favorite Clarence Gonstead story. Somebody was following him around, and I think it was Tom Morgan, and he would adjust somebody and go, "That was the best adjustment I ever gave." And he adjusts the next person, go, "That was the best adjustment I ever gave." And it was like going on. I mean, he said it like 100 times already. And Tom Morgan says to him, "How can you keep saying it's the best adjustment you ever gave?" He goes, "Because if I'm not getting better every time, what am I doing here?" It's not funny. I know it sounds funny, but I'm going to tell you something. It's not funny. It's the darn truth. If you're not thinking that way, start thinking that way. Because if you start thinking that way, it's going to matter different. And when you start taking care of people when it matters different, it's going to be different. I always want my adjustment to be the best I can give. Always. I don't ever want to give somebody a half-ass crap, let's see if we can make some bones move or something. It's got to be honored to express a better life. Open up the channels. Let the light shine through. Let the life be there. And if we can do that, there's enough people in this room, if we can do that, man, this whole world's going to light up. And we all can do that. And one of the things I love about speaking is it reminds me, because I don't ever know what I'm going to say, so I get to hear my talk, and then I get to go home and do it. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to do this. I'm going to go home and I'm going to make sure that every adjustment is the best I can do. And I'm going to take some of the things I heard this weekend to heart. You know, try to do less, but do more with that less. Try to have that force be less about what I did and more about what that body did. And I always point that out to people. And don't you ever, when you see it, it's a great thing to point out to people. You just barely nudge them, and inside you see it happen. It's like their bones jump off your hands and do something that you didn't even like. You weren't doing it. Their body did it. And I say, you see that? You see that? You see what just happened there? I barely nudged your body. Look what it did. Look how smart. Look how intelligent it is in there. Look how much you want it to be right. That's exciting. Chiropractic is exciting. That's all I got to say.